Fintech Chatter Podcast, brought to you by Tier 1 People, the leaders in executive search for Fintech ventures.
Hello and welcome to Fintech Chatter, the show where fintech leaders join me for a chat. I'm your host Dexter Cousins, and today's guests are John Crutchley and Dave Malcolm, co-founders of Mist. Gents, welcome to your Fintech Chatter debut.
Thank you, Dexter.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
John, we've been trying to do this for how long?
Probably, I would say maybe at least 18 months. We've been sort of dancing around the headbangs on this, but finally we're here.
Fantastic. We're going to have a bit of a chat about the big problem that you solved. But before we do that, Dave, maybe you could tell our listeners a little bit about Mist and what you do.
Sure. So Mist is a mobile app on iOS, on Android, that is designed to help the international students who are migrating around the world to move, settle, live. So we are aiming to build a product that makes the pre-departure process, the administration, all of the challenges that they have to go through a lot easier for them. And then within the app, we have embedded finance products and a whole range and suite of features and products that are suitable for the students as they embark on their international education journey.
Brilliant. So, John, you've been going about this for a little while.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about kind of how you got started and what the genesis was, and that kind of when you identified how big the problem was that you were solving?
Yeah, sure. Look, I guess probably this was born originally from my own move from the UK to Australia.
Yeah. I was thinking when Dave was talking about the app was, what about Lonely Planet? I think that's what I had when I rocked up to Melbourne 20 years ago. Was a Lonely Planet guide.
I think this is probably, like you're saying there, it hasn't changed that much from 20 years ago. I moved from the UK to Australia first time in 2007, roughly around there, and albeit with trying to open my banking, trying to get things. I was banking with HSBC. Yeah. We stupidly thought HSBC, they're the world's global bank, right? So, or the world's local bank, they were advertising themselves as, but none of, bank in Australia and bank HSBC in the UK spoke to each other. Yeah. So I eventually got here and eventually opened an account up with one of the big four, and eventually got all my debit cards and all those sort of things. Then I had the opportunity, went back to the UK, got a role with ANZ Bank, and was looking after essentially their sort of retail operation that was overseas, but was, helping out Australians who were in the UK that had lost debit cards and were in a bit of strife, and B, this sort of cottage industry. How do we help people migrating to open their accounts? So we got into that market, and the very short story is within a few years and the strategies that we'd put in place, we were literally helping thousands and thousands of people open their banking and fund their accounts before they arrived. I then had the opportunity to come back to Australia, working as one of the original team at Volt Bank. I knew Stevie Weston from the UK, and he invited me to come back here to do that. And look, was building the same sort of concept and operation out. COVID hit, Volt went one direction. I decided that I wanted to still scratch this itch and go in another direction, and hence where Mist was born.
So how did you meet John, Dave?
So we got introduced by a mutual friend. We met in the pub.
We did.
And we had a chat. JC was sort of explaining to me about this business he was building. And I got very excited about this sort of mega niche of international students and the opportunity to build a really meaningful product in this space. And so shortly after that, I joined the business.
Awesome. So you've mentioned there that your kind of clients and customers are international students. How have you been able to get into that market and kind of really understand the problems that they're going through in their experience?
Yeah, sure. I think, as I said, originated from my own experience of being able to open an account. And when I then was building this out offshore, just seeing the absolute appetite for a person moving to Australia to be able to say, you know, I want to set up as many things as I physically can, but actually then being able to sort their banking account and other things as well. But when I got here, I started to then, when I got back here with the Volt experience, I then started talking to people like the education institutions, the education agents, and the, you know, student doesn't qualify for Medicare, so they've all got to sort things like overseas health cover.
Yeah.
All these things they needed to put into place before they even apply for their visa. So it was dawning on me that it was like, well, okay, well, there's two ends of the scale here. One is they've got to pay for the deposit for their education. Could be $5,000-$10,000 before they even apply for their visa. Then they've got to pay and sort out their overseas health cover and get that insurance in place. And then they apply for their visa. So there's all these payments that needed to be made in AUD and all these other elements of the other end of the journey, like the insurer and the institutions that were taking money. And it was just so fragmented. And that was just one part of their experience. Setting up their telco, making payments for accommodation. All these things are very fragmented and individual in terms of what you need to do, verify, or what proof you need to get these in place. And hence that started to evolve in this bigger picture around, you know, opportunity to build a single point for them. And the other bit is then we really started to see the global opportunity in this. I think, you know, there's pre-COVID, and it's reduced, we've got back to those numbers now, 5 million students move around the world every year to study. It's predicted to get to 8 to 10 million within the next sort of 5 to 8 years. So the market is, as Dave often says, it's a niche, but it's a big niche.
Yeah. Dave, John's touched there on the kind of fragmented nature of the customer journey. What's that meant for, I guess, the kind of style of operating model for Mist? Is it a fintech, or do you see yourselves more as a kind of tech business?
So, yeah, I think labels aside, the sort of genesis of the idea is that the payments is or movement of money, paying for things that you need, is quite tricky, particularly pre-departure. We're not a pure fintech. However, you know, I like to refer to us as, you know, sort of using embedded finance, which I think is certainly we're going to see a lot more of in the future. Sort of an emerging trend within fintech is that non-pure play finance platforms are integrating financial services, and that's certainly exactly what we're doing. But it's really hard for a student to unlock anything without the ability to purchase or pay. So it really is at the very heart of what we're trying to offer students. But I think that the sort of peripheral products and services that we offer as well, that they do need to purchase, right, are also very, very important. Yeah,
it's really interesting to hear you say that, Dave, because I think I've been kind of openly vocal, you know, not necessarily critical, but questioning the whole kind of embedded finance. You know, we had banking as a service.
Sure.
Prior to that, then it was the next thing was, it's embedded finance.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that's really struck me, and what's great to hear what you're doing, is you're serving a particular niche and a customer with a need. Whereas, you know, when I hear people talk about embedded finance, it's usually fairly cynical around how can we just sell more shit to our existing customer base that they don't want, which we've seen, you know, kind of supermarkets do with, let's sell them insurance, let's sell them this, let's sell them that. Whereas I think what you're talking about is something that's actually solving a real problem that then has all of these other things that then cascade one after the other. You know, that then gives you the opportunity to support customers in a holistic way.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think you can get we can get caught up in the definition.
Yeah.
And you know, we see the ability to help the student pay for things. The cross-border financing is absolutely critical. I see it more as unlocking the ability for them to have a, you know, more meaningful life on their international student journey. So, you know, they have to purchase SIM plans so they can call home.
Yeah.
So we develop the very best plans that are student focused for them. If they need overseas health cover, which they need to purchase, we can issue prepaid Visa cards. Soon we will have BSB and account numbers. We use the cross-border payments. All of these things are very carefully situated on the students or the customer journey.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's for us, it's not really about extracting revenue from an existing platform. It's about providing super relevant services at the right time in the customer journey. And it doesn't take much to imagine, you know, when you look at the international student journey, that often is a path to skilled migration. So a student might come in, they might study English, they might do a graduate degree, they might do an MBA, and then what happens? And so, you know, at that point, they might need a loan or a mortgage or something else, right? And at that point, you know, we're very early in our journey, so we don't have any customers that have been through that life cycle to that degree yet. But we want to be there to offer them the relevant service at the right time. So that's kind of how I frame it.
Yeah, and look, it's such a good way of, I guess, summarizing the reasons why it doesn't work the other way around. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of talk about hyper-personalization, and really it's about getting my name right and a bit of a spam email. Yeah. Like, that's pretty much what we've seen so far, whereas I think, you know, what seems to be striking me is that you've got a cohort and a community of people who you kind of know the things that they're going to need. So the hyper-personalization piece, it's almost like natural, right? Like you just know the sequence of events that they're going to be going through. Yeah.
So, I mean, like, you know, I'm a marketing guy, right? So I'm always looking for that, like, what's the unifying human truth at the core of any business proposition? And with us, it's that, you know, moving country as an international student is expensive, stressful, complicated. Yeah. And that's clear, right? So our mission is to eradicate those challenges and issues along the way using, you know, our platform and whatever products are required. So, you know, we keep on going back to the customer journey, and students are like a highly valuable cohort, not only in terms of revenue, but also the potential opportunity that they bring to the country, right? You know, we know that international education is the third largest contributor to Australia's GDP. Despite how the government are carrying on at the moment, it looks like they're not particularly keen on international students, but it's a massive export market for us as a country. And so we really want to look after these students, and that starts before they leave home, right?
It's also the next generation of entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Next generation of high net worth individuals.
Absolutely.
And they're highly mobile. Yeah. In terms of moving around the world, and also the experiences, no pun intended, but the experiences that they want to engage with are also mobile, right? Yeah. So, you know, something that JC talks about a lot is, you know, the lines of students outside a bank, you know, on potentially a rainy day in Sydney, you know, paper in hand, passport in the other, going to get verified at a bank so they can access their funds. Who wants to do that? Like, no one. And so there's an opportunity through technology that we can build to really enhance the student journey, and also for our partners in the education space, really enhance their acquisition story, going, hey, we're going to make this so much easier for you when you're in country. And so I think that's really important.
Yeah. So, John, what are some of the big wins that you've had so far?
Look, I think, you know, we go out to the sector and we're talking to the two ends of I guess the journey from the student's perspective. They work with a lot of, or I think it's 85% of students come through an education agent in that process. And these agents both are onshore, but also, you know, they're based in country and send students all around the world. So we were at an event last year and we met 30 agents, and 30 agents wanted to sign up with us day one. So they see this as one of our investors called it the Trojan horse of solving for a lot of these problems. Yeah. And they're all keen to do this because they all want to focus on improving the student's experience, as Dave alluded to. And often they find they have to solve for this when they arrive in country, hand-holding to take them to get SIM plans or to get banking accounts set up and all those sort of things. To the other end of the scale, you know, we have great conversations with the education institutions, whether it be language colleges. We work very closely with the English language sector as well, because they've got international students who arrive in every week, you know, are on a pathway then to either vocational or higher education. So both ends of that. And the one bit I genuinely love about this sector that we're helping with is that the sector is really keen to improve the experience that these students have. So they see what we're building and they're so supportive of what we're looking to do. And we've got a couple of exciting things that we're looking at building at the moment around one of the other big problems the sector and the government are having at the moment. And they're supporting us. So it's a great experience for us as a business that we go into the sector and they're going, yeah, we're behind you and we're signing with you. How do we help you do this? And the other one I would say is people like Austrade and Investment New South Wales, really keen to engage and get us into, like, for example, the India market and taking Mist as a business to India to say, how do we get you into the sector over there? How do we get you into investors over there as well? So that from that side, that's really positive for us as a business and a group of people.
And in terms of partners, you mentioned there the education side. What about the kind of tech and the payment side and those challenges? Have you partnered with any other fintechs or tech financial services businesses to help you there? Yeah,
look, I think there's one of the things there is some great fintechs in this country as well. And like, I think going right back to my first arrival in 18 and I got introduced to Simon Costello and Aaron at Frankie One.
Yeah.
And when I saw what they were building in terms of being able to verify and identify people all around the world, you know, I think they're plugged into 300 plus, you know, it was like, immediately I'm looking, that's exactly what we need to be able to bring a student into our experience and verify them to a level that we need to do for whichever feature or products or service that we have. You know, telco's at a different level to BSB and accounts and cross-border, for example. But we're bringing all, and the likes of Frankie One, but also, you know, from the payment side, we're talking to the likes of Thread now, and we're working very closely with those groups, Currency Cloud. So these are people who are offshore and here. So with this global fintech or groups that we're bringing together to be best in class, to go, these are providing these individual solutions for us that we bring into our platform, and we orchestrate the experience to what we need from different fintech partners. So we are using several on that, and there's some great ones. And I think that's where the collaboration piece in the sector really works quite well. Yeah. In the fintech sector, maybe some further challenges with some of the sort of external to the fintech, you know, the big institutions. But we're definitely leveraging and leaning on some of the good fintechs that are already in the country.
I wanted to talk about, I guess, you know, the business itself and what you're building at Mist. I remember before you met Dave, a LinkedIn message from you saying, hey, can you help me hire a CTO? And I was like, John, like, this isn't the way to do it, man. And I think you came back to me and said, yeah, thanks for the kind of sanity check.
Yes, right? My naivety then.
Yeah. It's been awesome to kind of watch things develop and kind of watch your journey and then see you get together with Dave and just see things progress. But talk us through that journey of, you know, from what's happened since you had that beer in the pub.
Blimey, that's look. I mean, I'll say a bit, and then I'm sure Dave will follow on that. So, look, we met and we sort of, you know, we went through the sort of initial couple of months and, you know, do we like each other? Do we get on? Do we think we fit and stuff like that? And blessed to Stevie Grace, for identifying very quickly that we could have that gel work. So we worked well together. And then it was a case of like, right, we need to raise some capital to, you know, really grow it now, because we were sort of from a pitch deck to a proof of concept to now going, okay, we want to bring this to life and really get into market. So, you know, we had some great investor meetings, some initial early investors, but then it was the people challenge. Yeah. And, you know, that has been, I reckon, the most challenging part for us over the last, raising capital aside, which is a day job in itself.
Yeah.
But the people side of it has been an incredible challenge, because the mindset that you need to have to work in a startup that, needs to grow and scale and think outside of the box and play the problem, not each other, and no blame culture and all those sort of things is a very different mindset to working for a bank or working for a corporate. So
I think you've touched on something that's really important, and I try to point this out to founders when they're looking to raise capital is, hey, look, you got on the pitch deck, you're going to build this thing. Even if you raise the money, how are you going to get the people?
Yeah.
And I think, that we talk about a skill shortage and a talent shortage. It's not. What it is exactly what you've talked about. And I think the workplace, right, in society, we've got a social contract, which essentially for 90% of the population applies, which is, I'm going to pay you just enough so that you don't leave, and you're going to work just enough so that I don't sack you, right? And kind of most people, 9 out of 10 people are happy with, not necessarily happy, but, they'll kind of, that's what they enter into. Whereas your environment, the social contracts are very, very different. And you got to be thinking like an owner, and that's from even though you're not the owner, right? Yeah,
I mean, I think when from my side as well is that this was very much me, myself, and I in those first sort of 6-12 months of this. And when I met Dave, it was like his experience and background of building MarleySpoon. And taking that into the ASX and building, distribution and building teams was so valuable to me. Yes, we got on as well, but I think very, very quickly in our relationship with each other on this front, we just backed each other. Like and with times we sit there at each other, just looking at each other, going, "What do we do now? What do we do next?"
I'd love to ask you that question, because obviously you were Volt. Right, very different kind of outcome to MarleySpoon. Have you ever been at loggerheads when you kind of got, and have you kind of taken precedence around it? Mate, look, this is the way to do it, rather than...
I don't think loggerheads. I think one of the we're very good at arguing, actually, or disagreeing and reaching conclusions. So,
feels like that at times.
I think we probably spend
I miss him at the weekend.
We spend more time with each other than we do at home. But I think I've hired and built some big high performance teams. So you learn a lot on the way. What I have learned though is it's different every time. And in terms of settling disagreements, I'm a big process person. So I like to make decisions based on data. I like to deal with problems in a linear fashion. That's really hard to do. I'm by no means an expert, particularly when you're so emotionally invested in what you're trying to do. So, we do as a leadership team, us and our colleagues constantly have to bring ourselves into line, and we're all on the same team, and I think that's just the human condition. One of the other challenges around people though, which I think is particularly in the startup culture, is this constant kind of tension between your funding, we mentioned both these things, and how much you can afford to pay for people. And I think that people really, who are going into their first kind of battle as an entrepreneur, really underestimate this. And it's a really, really hard thing to get right, because you can't extend your cash burn on your headcount too much, because it's deemed by investors to be irresponsible. We have the challenge that we're both non-technical founders, so we don't write code, which is quite unique really in building a tech company. That said, our investors back us, they like us, they there's plenty of proof around what we can and can't do. But what that does mean is that your core development team really need to be in line with the founder's vision and mission. And so that requires even more work to get them on board. And then the other challenge is, and I don't know, I mean, you obviously have a much broader view on this than I do, but, we offshore some of our development. So we are not only running a hyper-growth startup, but we're running an async team in multiple countries, which adds another layer of complexity, particularly when it comes to productivity and governance. So the people side of the business is intensely challenging on many dimensions. The cost, the quality, communication, location, time zones. So yeah, people shouldn't underestimate how complicated it is. And, you know, our number one value is build the best team. Yeah. And so we prioritize it very, very highly in the business, and it needs to be prioritized, but it's certainly very, very challenging on all of those dimensions I mentioned.
Yeah, I often equate it, you know, a metaphor being first-time founders. It's like a non-league club pitching to investors that they're going to be a Champions League club in 5 years, and they're asking them for money so they can go out and sign Ronaldo and Messi to go and play non-league football, right? It's just, even if you could afford them, they're not actually going to be the right people to get you to the next division. Yeah. And it's kind of, you got to look at it as, hey, you know, if the aim is Champions League, we've got to get to this division, then this one, then this one, and who are the people that, one, you know, we can afford, but two, kind of got the right skills and resources just to get us to that next stage.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent analogy.
I'm going to use it.
JC loves football.
I'll no doubt use that.
But it's absolutely true, because one, you can't afford those key players, but also I think at our stage you're recruiting for. Obviously, there's core competencies and skill sets that are required, right? Yeah. That goes without saying. But the attitudinal piece is massively important. And that's what you were saying earlier. You want people that, you know, will go the extra mile, do care, believe in the long-term vision, because obviously in startups people are rewarded as well with in other ways other than just their straight up remuneration. And I don't mean other ways like getting to work with JC, but you know there's obviously equity at stake, and also, you know, who doesn't want, well, lots of people don't, who doesn't want to build something awesome, right? That's why we're all here. We're trying to build something and make a difference. So people need to buy into
it. It's a really good point, that, right? Because you say who doesn't want to do that, and I think the reality is most people don't when they know the sacrifices they have to make. Everybody will tell you if you ask them, oh yeah, I want to be part of the mission, I want to. But when you tell them that means you can work 24/7, you know, 7 days a week, 24 hours, right? Like, and it's those kind of harsh realities of, look, you know, nothing good, nothing worthwhile comes without the sacrifice.
But also doing multiple roles, and I totally agree with everything you said. But it goes beyond just like putting in the hours, because I think as I'm going to say it, as an older founder, it's funny, we did actually have some VCs, not to be named, who told us we were too old. But I believe we have battle scars. But you certainly value, I think, yes, you're going to work very hard, but it's not just grinding, right? It's being smarter, making better decisions. But also, everyone in the business wears multiple hats. So there's a huge amount of context shifting. And engineers and developers tend not to love that. But 1 minute they might be, you know, building on their core competency, but we still expect them to have high level critical thinking about the business. So finding someone who's a great developer, but also has good commercial acumen and input. It's practically impossible to find, right?
You know, I say this to people, just being a one-man band, right? Like, you know, mentally switching from 1 minute I'm the accountant, then I'm doing recruitment, then I'm editing a podcast, then I'm marketing, then I'm selling. It's just mentally exhausting.
It's tiring.
Right? And it's not necessarily that you work in long hours all the time. It's just the fact that, you know, just as you said, to switch from those hats to hats, just the mental agility and energy that's required to do that and remain sharp and focused. It's tough, right?
And when you find people that can do that, they're gold, right?
They're gold. I found it, I struggled initially with almost not beating myself up about stuff that I'd maybe forgotten or missed, or like why hadn't I thought of that or done these sort of things. But you go into that particular point that you're saying there, you're doing so much, and you've got to be able to move away from those sort of things, let them go pretty quickly. Fail, you know, the fail fast thing, but it's almost like forget fast as well. Like,
how do you kind of keep inspired and keep that, you know, waking up every morning, and you know, even though that things are going wrong, that you're still got that energy that you can pass on to the team, but also for yourself as well, to keep yourself mentally fit and healthy?
From my perspective, I am one that is I'm an incredibly passionate person. I believe that if you have a passion about something, then you're going to put your effort into it and maintain that drive. And like, I'm super passionate about this whole, both the sector, what the problems that we're solving for. We're talking about the people and things. We've got a great team. We've got a really good, solid core team in the business now, and through hook or crook, and some of it has been accidental, some of it has been on purpose thing, but we've ended up with a great team, and I'm motivated every day by that is, I often say to the guys, there's no wonder what we're trying to do hasn't been done before, because the complexity of the technology and the legislation, the regulation, and cross-border and different, it's very complicated. Yeah. But we're getting through it. Each day we're getting a little bit further, a little bit better, a little bit closer. So that keeps my motivation going on a very base level.
Yeah. What about you, Dave?
I think, it's a very big question. I mean, one of the reasons that, and JC wouldn't say this about himself, but he's actually quite a nice guy. He's very family orientated. So, we've both got young families. Being able to break away from work at a kind of macro level is really important. Again, attitudinally, we've had some horrendous times, but we don't take ourselves too seriously. We get on well, we have good banter, we laugh, we move through it. So I think those are kind of maybe, on the emotional peripheral side of how you cope with everyday stress. I keep fit, go running, we have a laugh, we have a beer every now and again. We don't take it too seriously. Yeah. On getting through the work challenges, again, systematic, process orientated, making sure everyone knows what's going on, communication. And these are all areas that are really easy to say and hard to do. But that's the way you get through hard times, is that you have a plan. And so we work pretty carefully, or we're getting better at it, I should say, at making sure we have really robust plans, and we're confident with our backups, sort of plan A's and B's. And if I can, just to go back on the sort of fast failure thing, I think that's kind of been co-opted badly out of marketing chat. And, failing fast is great if you're marketing and you're split testing an email. Losing someone's entire deposit for their university fees that's not a good fail fast.
No, it's not.
So I think it really needs to be contextualized. And people talk about what's your MVP. Within fintech and MVP, you've got to be super careful, particularly when, again, you're handling perhaps someone's entire dream fund for their entire family, about what they're going to do with their life. You cannot get that wrong.
You can't move fast and break things.
No. So, I kind of love the idea of it. I don't wear that T-shirt. I think it's like, particularly on the technology side, do it right. It might not look the best, sure. But again, we're building a business that involves people's funds. We need to develop trust. And so I think the risks that we take might be in, literally marketing activity, but certainly not in compliance, development, engineering, security. So it's a bit of a, just to make sure we're on the same page, because I think people throw that around way too easy. And I don't think it actually works in any startup. In my previous businesses, it's like, if someone's having chicken for dinner and you don't sell them the chicken, that's not an MVP, is it? That's noodles without chicken. That's a failure. And the stakes that we're dealing, no pun intended, the stakes we're dealing with Mist are way higher.
Way higher.
Can't mess around with people's finances.
You said something just before, which I think is also another kind of myth to be dispelled, right? And it's around the idea. And, you pointed out, nobody's done this before, right? I'm sure they've had the idea. Right? But the reason they haven't done it is because it's complex, it's tough. There's all this legislation, you've got all these different jurisdictions. And I think oftentimes, I often see founders who have what they think is a great idea that nobody's done before.
Yeah.
And the reason why nobody's done it before is because there isn't a market there, and it's not that great an idea, and you're kind of projecting what you think is a real need. That basically, if you ask people, that say, "Oh yeah, that's great, I would love that." I spoke to somebody recently where it was about an investing platform. I was like, "Hey, that's great. It's in principle, it sounds great, but as a parent, I've got other things to worry about than my kids investing.
Yeah.
So it's going to be way down on the priorities." Yep. So I'll tell you it's a great idea. Tell you I'd love for my kids to be investing. I'd tell you I'd love for them to be educated. But I'm paying for homework, studies. I've got sports. I've got all this other stuff that, as a parent, I can't deal with it. And my kids can't. They got enough to cope with as well. And so I think it's kind of, unless you're going to make, to your point, the embedded thing, right? Like that whole sequence of this is so complex, right? It's like, we've moved ourselves. I remember still now I've got the email list of all the stuff I have to do, x-rays, tests for this, right? Blood tests, visa, ticket, somewhere to live, bank account, and just all these lists that, it was just on an email, and you're like checking it off, and you print it off, and you're ticking the stuff off, and you had to organize everything yourself. And whereas for this, missed solution, it's literally sign up, and it's sequential.
Yep.
And I think that's the thing that, for me, the whole complexity of the problem, that's big, right? That is tough, but it's how you then solve that problem for the customer as well. And that's the thing that I think is really difficult for founders to get right. Is that, it's usually the smallest problems that are the most complex. Right. And the problem with a small problem is you usually don't have that big a market. And it's not that, much of a kind of scratch to be itched from a consumer. Whereas with this, it seems like you kind of hit all of the kind of main things that you need to hit in order to have a successful business.
When you take
go on, mate.
Sorry, when you take that laundry list of things in your email, we know what they are, right? So it's not like we're inventing the phone. Right. But we know people need SIM plans. So for us, achieving product market fit is exactly as you described, is that we're bringing together services that exist in a way that hasn't been done before, that is much easier. So it's like an, dare I say it, a bit of an Uber kind of approach. There were taxis, but Uber was better. You can go to the bank and KYC in country. You can get a SIM plan at the airport. You can fiddle around and try and do a whole range of things. You can buy overseas health cover over here, but what no one's really doing is aggregating it and sitting that under one single source of verification. So I think that in terms of we're not reinventing the wheel in terms of the actual products and services, but we're making it easier and better. And it's still complicated. But I think that us achieving product market fit is hopefully easier in that regard, that we're just corralling the challenges into an easier, more manageable place.
We've seen over this first kind of decade of fintech in Australia, a lot of what I would call fintechs who are really just a feature in an app. Sounds like you've done the reverse. Fintech is a feature in the app.
Yeah, I like that. I'll steal that. No,
mate, you're the marketing guy. I'm coming up with all these things.
I think that's absolutely true. And without straying too far away from the fintech piece, given that we're on the podcast, the money piece unlocks everything else. It's absolutely the crux of the matter. But it sits alongside a whole host of stuff.
I think that what I've really, I'm trying to do with this season of Fintech Chatter is get back to the origins of fintech. And that is that, when I got involved and what got me excited initially, and I think it's been lost somewhat over the last few years, is that it was there to create a fairer financial system and to give access to people that wouldn't usually have access. And I think, how you do that is by solving real problems that people have, and doing it in a way that, you know, is driven by values and fairness and, you know, kind of equality and, you know, equity, an equitable solution that everybody benefits from. And I think it's kind of, you know, we've dressed it up a bit, you know, where we've got stuff like, you know, payday advances, and it's, you know, we're democratizing finance, and say, well, no, we're kind of exploiting people who, you know, kind of, yeah. And I think it's really great to be seeing this next wave of fintechs going back to that. Let's go and really solve a problem and be innovative. And it is big and it's complex and it's difficult. Yeah. But, you know, that's where the gold is, right? Like that's where the opportunity is.
It's a big, look, as we've said, you know, it's a big niche market. It's, you know, predicted to be 8 to 10 million. And look, as Dave said a little bit earlier, you wouldn't think so with regard to how the governments are behaving at the moment and looking at controlling migration and students and blaming them for accommodation issues in this country, etc. But look, it's cyclical and it will come back round and it'll work through. And we try to block those noises out, essentially. And what we've done is gone, okay, here's a series of problems that is a big global market. And the problems are common, whether it's here, the UK, the US, or Canada, which are the big four sort of end destination points, which is also an interesting one, like you just mentioned there about like 20 years ago, this was a problem. Today, it's still a problem. And we sort of speak English. You know, a lot of our customer base is, you know, Latin America.
I said exactly that about 3 months ago. And I was talking to somebody else and I was like, you know, and they're Asian and they moved as a student. I was like, you know, I thought it was tough for me. I speak English and I didn't realize at the time how much of an asset that was, right?
I often regale this one as well. When my son came over the first time last year on a working holiday visa, we could have set something up for him. And I went, no, I want you to go to one of the big four, try and open an account. And he just kept coming back each day. He was still getting pulling his hair out, like going, can't be this difficult, Dad. And I'm like going, okay. Right, now go and get yourself a driving license. Now go and get yourself a Medicare. Get yourself a tax file number. And all these things are just... So, you know, we're looking at the piece by piece and not, you know, everything in one particular go. But if we're able to bring this together for the students or there'll be migrants that we can evolve into as well. You know, it's a fun space as well to be in. And we, like I said, we work very closely with a lot of the fintechs who have gone and solved for problems in this space. You know, the Frankies of the world and the like. So it's an exciting time.
So we talked about just before the podcast, Dave, I guess the change in mood, mentality, not just in funding, but we've talked there about the change in kind of psyche around some of the problems now that fintechs are looking to solve. What's got you excited about the industry right now? And, you know, kind of what do you see as the potential next big wave that we could look forward to?
So I think there's a lot to be excited about, but I think it's also important to realize that the global fintech sector is going through some sort of consolidation. So the sort of 2021 sort of heyday of these huge investments and valuations is no longer there. And I think we're seeing a far more considered investment into the sector. And I think, again, we spoke about this off air, but this focus now around solving problems and driving revenue rather than growth at all costs. So I'm looking forward to seeing businesses that come forward in the sector who are actually driving accretive growth through problem solving rather than flash in the pan in the sector. So hopefully you'll lose some of the bad actors and people will be back to your point, which was what is fintech at its heart, whether we're dealing with the unbanked, whether we're dealing with people moving countries that are struggling. And, you know, if you look at the growth, the BCG Global FinTech report stated that we're now growing at something like 14 to 20% over the last 2 years. And by 2030, we'll be a $1.5 trillion market. So that's 5x where we are now, right? Largely driven by, dare I say it, you know, embedded new finance products, AI, and a whole sort of suite of new innovations, some we wouldn't have even seen. So the growth is there. if you're willing to participate and solve the problems.
Yeah.
So yeah, just to reiterate, I want to see real problems being solved for real customers, not like real features being solved that maybe are just credit lines dressed up as a nice new feature to allow you to go shopping on the weekend. Not throwing shade at any big organizations in particular,
that was a decade ago, right? That was innovation, right? And it kind of led to it.
Yeah, but you've got to move. But
you've got to move on.
You've got to move on. And I think with our business, we're late to the party. The problem's been around for ages, and so we're really excited to solve that problem, partnering with great people in the space.
And John, for you?
I thought he answered it perfectly well, but I think that the other bit that I'm excited about is that there is some fantastic fintechs that are out there, and we're just about to partner with another one that was Fintech of the Year, Keish. We're working closely with Caleb and the team there around another solution that is for a real problem the industry's got. A real problem around genuine proof of funds for students to survive while they live in Australia. For that number keeps increasing from the government side up to $29,700 now, and we're working on we've seen this as a problem. The industry is telling us that it's a problem, and we're working on a solution. So we're really excited about that one as well, because that will be something that's not there at the moment in the market at all, so that collaboration side of it, getting together with other founders of these fintechs, these great fintechs in the country, and okay, we've got a problem here. How can we work out to solve it? So I'm really looking forward to continuing that collaboration with other players in the industry and other sectors, ed tech as well, to start bringing together other innovative solutions that we want to bring into our platform.
It's been great to chat, guys. We're listened to in over 40 countries, so if anybody is listening and maybe their kids are going to be going over, what's the best way for them to find out about Mist?
Go to our website, gomist.co, or search for us in the App Store. Or you can
download the app.
You can download the app.
Yep.
You can download the app today. No, awesome. But you can, or find us on LinkedIn. We're relatively active there, trying to ramp that up now. I need to speak to the marketing guy about doing that, but we're both there. But yeah, and also, any problems that international students have, we're here to represent them. So please feel free to reach out.
We also get amazing talent listening to this show. If anybody's listening and they're really, I guess, enthused by the Mist product and problem that you're solving, what's the best way for them to find out about potential careers?
Again, reach out to us on LinkedIn.
Probably LinkedIn is
the best way. Yeah.
Well, guys, it's been great to catch up.
You
glad
too.
we finally got to do this.
No, me too, mate. It's been great to see you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
As always, folks, you can catch up with me on LinkedIn. Thanks very much for your support. And if you're new to the show, make sure you follow us on your podcast player of choice and leave us a review. It really helps support great founders like Dave and John and great Aussie startups like Mist, and give them a platform and profile on which they can grow. Until the next episode, keep safe. Fintech Chatter is brought to you by Tier 1 People, leaders in fintech executive search. We'll help you bring in world-class leadership talent to build world-class fintech ventures. And you can find us at tier1people.com.